You made a post, I think, after Nick Walker won the Arnold, right? That was one of your posts.
No, the thing is,
You made a
you
post
know,
about Nick Walker, right? So what's exactly do you see wrong with him or his physique, or you know, what I mean, explain that so I understand.
yeah. First of all, I will explain why the post was not about Nick Walker. The post was not about the Arnold Classic. The post was about bodybuilding in general. And the reason that I put it like that, and I had a cut off picture of them, and my next post was actually was a picture of me with a frock on it. The reason for that I wanted to have like attention for something, and because what I notice on Instagram nowadays that there are two groups. You either like it or you don't like it. You're against it, and I find a lot of people very aggressive and reacting to each other. And there, in both camps, in both sides, they are asking. I hear this question all the time: whose fault is this? What's the reason? And is this the evolution of bodybuilding, or is this like what is it the federation or the athletes, and or is it whatever are the coaches? I hear those kind of things, and then I looked at myself, and then I realized that back in the days when I was like that guy that I was talking about, 16, 17 years old, and going to the gym, when I saw that poster of Arnold Schwarzenegger, that day that I made a decision that I want to become a world champion bodybuilder, I realized that at the time that Arnold Schwarzenegger was as shocking as open class bodybuilding nowadays. So realizing that that means at the time. So I'm not going to point the finger to Nick or any open bodybuilder from today. I'm actually looking at myself because I realized at the time, and nobody out of bodybuilding will understand what this means, but I knew at the time I would do anything to become better, to become in a better shape, to lose fat, to become bigger. Um, and then I realized, but I was grown up in an era that Arnold Schwarzenegger was shocking. You have to think about this, like Tarzan was played by a guy with a pencil net. So what would have happened if I was that guy from 16 years old today? I am sure that my perception would be very different because now the guys, me, let's say I was the guy from 16 years old now. So I'm talking about myself. The guys now, I would look at movie stars like The Rock. I would see Instagram. So the standards are totally different. And the open class bodybuilding is the same as Arnold Schwarzenegger that posted back in the days, which mean I would have done what it takes, meaning I would do anything, meaning I would do done the same thing. I admit that I was so far in this sport and so caught up that I was willing to do anything that it takes. So and that by itself is really alarming because what I'm just saying is like I would have done it, so everybody would have done it. So that, what is the whose fault is it? Is it the coaches?
Right. My question is this: if you look at today's the top competitors in men's open, right? Whether it's I
Yeah.
know let's not talk about even Nick, but Big Ramy, Brennan Curry. Let's look at those guys, right? The top, William Bonac, for example, right? What's is there something wrong with their physiques that you don't like? I'm trying to understand exactly what's the issue is. You know what I'm saying?
Yeah, very. That's very important. Um, it's not about size. Back in the days, the guys that I called frogs, blown up frogs, they were half the size of Arnold Schwarzenegger. The guys that I call in frogs nowadays, they are half the size of some of the guys from the golden era, and I'm actually calling the 90s the golden era, with Kevin Levron, Sean Ray, Flex Wheeler. Those guys, they were like bigger than most of the guys that I'm calling frogs again. So it's to me it's more like, what is the criteria for bodybuilding? And of course, I'm not that 16-year-old guy from the old days. I'm also not that 16-year-old guy who's living today. I'm almost that 60 years old guy that can put everything in perspective. And then I'm saying, well, I think they're missing the boat with bodybuilding. It's not just the size, but if they're looking for the criteria that I had back in the days and still have,
Which is what exactly? Which is what exactly? What's the one thing that's missing right now?
Well, if let's start with naming the same names again: Arnold, Sean Ray, Flex Wheeler, Kevin Levron. To me, those guys, and today we have like Patrick Moore. You know, I just believe that the lines in the bodybuilders, it should be art. It should be like if you draw like a statue or make a statue, it has to look like that. And that's
conditioning essentially, right? Is that what we're talking about?
no, it's not really conditions, because the bodybuilders today, the conditions, their skin is so thin, they are so big and ripped, but still the condition is less, I believe, than back in the days. And I'm not talking about myself. A very good example for this is Rich Gaspari. Rich Gaspari, he was the first guy who had separation and density. Things like that you kind of miss. So but it's not that's condition-wise. But I'm missing the lines. I'm missing the art in the statues in the bodybuilders. That's what I'm missing. But again, I'm conditioned. I'm the old man who's conditioned back in the day. So of course I'm holding on to them. My message.
How do you achieve the lines that you're talking about, right? To make it look like a statue, basically. How is that achieved? What are they not doing, in your opinion, to achieve that look?
Anybody on the Olympus stage, anybody on like a world champion stage, they're training their ass off. So basically, it is about genetics. So yeah, if if I say that, yeah, but you know, then that means that actually some guy he responded to my post. He said, yeah, but then like a guy like Nick Walker can't compete. Well, if I'm like 5 feet tall, I can't really play in the NFL or what is it, like in the basketball division, the pro division. So yeah, that is genetics, and then everybody on the Olympus stage has to have those genetics, in my opinion, and
So,
then.
so what you're saying is, I just want to understand you 100% correctly. What you're saying is the modern bodybuilders today that compete in top competitions are lacking genetically.
Um, because the criteria is not like that. If they changed criteria, like that it has to be athletic, it has to be classic, and all those kind of things, then it would be different. And then if I say, I hope you understand what I'm saying, but if I say this to somebody, everybody tells me, yeah, but we have the classic physique. We have that's alternative. But if that would be the case, that would indicate that it was about size. And it's not about size, because there's a weight limit. Because Kevin Levron, again, all those guys from the 90s, even Dorian Yates, he was like, in the beginning, he had the waist and the double biceps and all that. And it all changed by pushing the boundaries and going further and further. So
I just want to make sure after this interview, people understand you 100%. Because essentially, the bodybuilders today, right? I mean, I mean, the objective of Man's Open, right, is to get the size, condition, right, and to bring it to that level of the extremes in a way, right? I mean, it was always done that way, right, from my understanding. But what you're saying is, are they not doing something right when they actually train, or are they lacking genetics to achieve the look that you think is the best?
Yeah, you mentioned they get big and they have to get conditioned, but those guys that I named, and the best example for that is Frank Zane. That was not about condition. I sometimes I compare Frank Zane with like an Italian race car. If it's the same with a bodybuilder, the flow of a calf has that line of that calf has to go all the way up to the shoulder and with classic poses. But again, to me, it's not classic is not the alternative because that again would indicate that it's about size. But bigger guys like I name it again like Flex Wheeler. He had all the criteria that I have for bodybuilding, and they are not just not doing that anymore. They're not appreciate those kind of physiques anymore. And the reason why, I don't know. I always I'm a guy who always think that if you want to change something, you have to look at yourself. Well, the thing that if I want to change it, at least I can mention that I have one of the guys who was willing to do everything for it. You know, I even told in seminars, if I win the Olympia one day and live 10 years younger, I will do it. So meaning, I was one of the guys. Exact. I would done today again. I would have done the same thing. So if you have to look at yourself, if you have to say whose fault of it, I'm part of the fault because I was one of the guys in my era that was pushing those limits and boundaries.
So, in your opinion, when did it change? Like, who was the last bodybuilder in your opinion, right? The last Mr. Olympia or whoever, last champion that you thought had all the criteria for what you consider to be a great bodybuilder?
Well, you know, I'm not that busy with it like in my daily life, so I don't really know the years exactly. But we had like lined up in the 90s. We with a lineup that maybe 4 or 5 guys were actually they had credit to win the Olympia, and you know again that's the guys that I'm thinking about now: Sean Ray, Flex Wheeler, Kevin Levrone. But yeah, I think that lineup in the 90s that was the best era. I think they became bigger and bigger, but they still had the shape of what, in my opinion. But again, I'm conditioned in the old days. I'm the old man now, so of course I'm liking that. But in my opinion, the 90s, that's when they lost it because they started to appreciate the size and the conditions over over the lines and the aesthetics. I didn't mention that name. I didn't use that word aesthetics, and that's a real crucial thing in this as well.
So you don't think, all right, so 90s era, I get it, right? But so you don't think, I don't know, like Phil Heath, for example, right? You don't think, or Kai Green, you don't think they exemplified, what great bodybuilding should be like?
Actually, I'm so happy you're naming those two because those are really, of course, only a few years, back, and there was the great example to explain how my criteria is built. A lot of people they think they always ask me, "Well, Phil Heath, he should, he deserved to win." But then I go back. If I look at Kai Green when he was in his very best shape and he won, I don't know the year, but a couple of years ago when he won the Arnold Classic in Australia. If that Kai Green stand next to Phil Heath in the best shape, I would pick Kai Green. And I will tell you exactly why. First of all, this is also part of the other answer that, again, just a few years ago, there were bodybuilders like with my criteria. Why Kai Green? If you make a drawing like a cartoon, if you make a cartoon of a bodybuilder, you're making you're drawing the lines of Kai Green. And why do I pick Kai Green above Phil Heath? Strip them both from muscles and their bone structure. Kai Green is like shoulders, waist. Phil Heath is shoulders, waist, and he's enormous big, and you got like the size and every pose, he's tremendous. But he doesn't have the lines like Kai Green had. So yeah, maybe a very good example. I'm glad you're naming him, Kai Green. He's from this era, but he still had, in my opinion, the lines.
Well, let's take it a step further. So, how would you rank Big Ramy then? I mean, he's a current champion, current Mr. Olympia, right? Do you think he's a great bodybuilder?
Well, I was happy that he won the show last year. I have to say, maybe it's already clear for you. I personally have a love-hate relationship. Not this year, but I still go often to the Mr. Olympia just to watch it. So I can appreciate it. And if it's not the type. It's not the direction that I would like to see bodybuilding to go, but I can appreciate it because I know what they're doing for it. But that's my personal love-hate relationship with the whole sport.
No, I respect it. Now, last thing I want to ask you about this whole thing, Dorian Yates, he spoke out, he said, well, bodybuilders in my era were better. Ronnie Coleman did the same thing, Samir Banu, like all the guys from their era say their era is the best, right? So, I mean, you saying the same thing essentially, right? So, I mean, do you think it may be just nostalgia? You kind of like miss the old days, the good old days. You know what I'm saying? As opposed to like really the sport
Yeah,
getting worse.
yeah, but
What would you say to that?
Yeah, no, that's why I kind of made that example earlier that I am conditioned, in that era. So of course that's what I think is beautiful. But more importantly is most important is that if I would have grown up, I would be conditions like the guys today and with the pushed boundaries, and I would have done the same thing. So I would do it. So it's so subjective. So I'm even saying a kid in the 80s, he would have liked that, like me. If the same kids will like the bodybuilding of today. But the reason is not just about, and now we're coming to a really important thing. The reason that I'm saying this all is not about that I don't like the aesthetic that much anymore. It's not about that result. I'm at the point willing to say that not today. Back in the day, same for me. That bodybuilding in total is becoming insane because what those guys have to do for it today. What I would have done if I was an 18-year-old kid today, I would have done the same thing. So it's not a finger to point, but bodybuilding in the total has become insane, and there is no finger to point whose fault is that. If we zoom out of this, then maybe it's just the results and what's happening in the rest of the society. If you just think about other problems that we have because of pushing boundaries, obesitas, for example, like there are so many things. in the society going on that is just because of pushing boundaries, and that's yeah. Again, I believe something has to happen, and the only thing I can do is post on Instagram like that, and explain, say something about it, and well, having an interview with you and be just honest about it.
Yeah, and that's why I want to make sure, like very clearly, people understand your point of view. So what you're saying is basically bodybuilding got too extreme, right? It's too extreme. I understand what you're saying. I just want to make sure people clearly understand what you mean.
Yeah, it's too extreme, and I'm not really. I can deal with the fact I'm the old man. I'm conditioned back in the days. It's the new generation. It's the evolution of bodybuilding. But it's more. Now we're coming to a really important point. For the first time in my life, I was after my post. I was called a hater, and that really. I thought, what a hater. I'm not saying this of personal interest. The reason I'm saying is because it's an I'm addressing an issue that is concerning me, and I'm doing that with love. And if I look at that guy who had his pec tear, myself back in the days, at that point, so I know how bodybuilders, how far they go. I was my world was collapsed. So I know the guys, the drive, and I know why they're doing it because I've done the same thing, and I would have done the same thing again today. And yeah, I'm luckily I am, at some point I've been able to get loose from it. I always say get loose from my ego and be one with everything there is. And once I start meditating on all those kinds of things, I've been able to put everything in perspective. And so it's not about that I don't like it anymore. I'm the old guy. It's more about that it's going too far. Maybe accidents will happen, and they are already happening with bodybuilders.